Want a recipe for success? Step 1, visit ocdfamilypodcast.com/courses. Step 2, click on my link to browse OCD Training School's amazing course catalog. Step 3, enroll. And step 4, enjoy learning. With no added cost to you, you can support the OCD family community while grabbing some continuing education or learning how to bridge yourself to self-help strategies for OCD. Again, that's ocdfamilypodcast.com/courses. And use my special link to sign up today. Hi, fam. Welcome back as we round out Autism Acceptance Month with my return guest, my old friend and advocate, Katie Munday, for an inspiring and unfiltered conversation. So join us because we're diving into the intersections of autism, OCD, disability advocacy, accessible healthcare, and the challenges and triumphs of doing research that includes, reflects, and respects. So buckle up because you won't want to miss this empowering and heartfelt conversation. I'm Nicole Morris, licensed marriage and family therapist and mental health correspondent. And let me be the first to say, welcome to the family. The OCD family, that is. I am here to create a community of support for family members, spouses, partners, parents, adult children, as there may be adult words, and chosen family of OCD sufferers and their community. I've had over 22 years of experience in the mental health field, but please note that this information does not qualify or substitute as a diagnostic evaluation, therapy, or treatment, and it is presented on an as-is basis. Please follow up with a qualified mental health provider in your area regarding concerns for yourself or loved ones. Thank you for joining us today. Now, let's get started. Okay, welcome back. So family, it's been a busy week. I'm so glad to be back with you, and we have been amplifying autistic voices, or talking about neurodivergent affirming care and how to help our autistic family members, friends, loved ones. So it's been a really good month, and yet I'll just note for anybody new joining us that though we are taking this opportunity during the month of April, which is Autism Acceptance Month, I talk about our autistic OCD fam often here because it is near and dear to my heart. I aim to be inclusive, and I also have a number of autistic people in my family, including my 3 kids. And speaking of my kiddos, my son Jack was on a couple episodes ago, and I have to just share, I have to brag, I have to have a mom moment, y'all, because this is Pam, right? So we share these kind of things. But I was so proud this morning. I got a message from the principal, my husband and I, about my oldest son Jack, and I loved it. And so I'm just going to brag about it because I can. Why not? But this morning, I found out that Jack was recognized on his morning announcements for being an outstanding citizen at his elementary school. And the principal noted that each day they try to recognize a few students who have shown exceptional kindness to others. And Jack was nominated by another person at the school for being incredibly kind. So the principal just wanted us to know that they were proud of him and that they're just grateful for having his kind heart at the school. And it made my mama heart beam. And not just because I'm his mom, but because I can remember growing up that through different periods of his development, there were misunderstandings about him. He was very good at communicating what he needed. Maybe part of the benefit or consequence of having a therapist for a mom, I don't know. But what he needed was sometimes regarded by others as strange or different. And so, despite being respectful in the way that he would communicate or struggling and kind of verbally processing through different struggles, sometimes that just felt invisible to others. And visibility is so very, very important. And it's something that we're going to be talking a lot about today because all of us are important. But even more so, we're going to be zooming in and thinking about how research reflects this. Now, I'm a very research-based person. I talk about the evidence-based practices that we use for OCD often, and I am one to really try to make sure I have some data that is reliable and not just massaged, as we learned from Uma Chatterjee last month. But there is a lot of room for growth. Research is not representative of all people, and there's not trust across all research communities. So, as we dive into this conversation today, I know all of us come with our unique backgrounds, our unique experiences, and this podcast is for you, family. It's open to you, and I hope that it reflects you. So, as we go into this conversation, I also want to invite you, wherever you may be, to join with curiosity and compassion. We're going to be diving into some important and sometimes nuanced topics, including neurodiversity, disability, OCD, mental health, etc. And in a day where conversations can feel really, really polarized, I really want to gently encourage us to hear each other out. You may not agree with every idea discussed. You might be like, yes, and even more. And this space, fam, it's about making room for real stories, real experiences, and real humanity. Because as we will discuss many times over, as it turns out, you are important. So whoever you are, wherever you're coming from, I invite you to join us, to listen, to reflect, and to explore the ways that we can build a more inclusive, thoughtful world together. So with that, let me just remind you really quickly about our wonderful guest today, Katie Munday from across the pond. Katie Munday is a queer and disabled researcher, advocate, and consultant. They were diagnosed with OCD in their early 30s and currently pursuing their doctoral degree. Katie loves to work with people from their community and to embrace and hold each other with care and validation. And fam, I think you'll quickly find Katie does that in strides. So let's meet Katie, because there's so much interesting and important conversation ahead, and I can't wait for you to hear more. Well, welcome back to the OCD Family Podcast, and I'm happy today because I have my friend Katie Munday back. They're here to share their wisdom and an update. We had you on the show maybe, gosh, was it 2 years now, Katie?
Yeah. Yeah, it was. It was in March 2023, I think.
Oh my word. How is that 2 years ago?
It felt also like yesterday.
It felt like yesterday, but Katie and I
Yeah.
have also kept in touch. And so maybe that's partly why it hasn't felt that long. But I'm so excited to have Katie back because Katie is doing great things, is very, very busy. And so first things first, I just want to welcome you back to the fam here. We are so happy to have you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be back too. Yes, I only know that date because I not tend to be very good with dates because I did a blog transcript and everything else like that. And I thought, oh, it's another one that was March 2023. Wow.
That is wild. Yes. And so, family, as always, I'm going to have a blog that corresponds with this episode's podcast over at ocdfamilypodcast.com. And I will link that prior episode because we were talking about the intersectionality of being autistic, of trans. We talked about OCD. We talked about so many things in that episode. And I really valued that conversation. So, I will link that over there. But first things first, I would love to hear an update regarding how you've been.
Oh my goodness, for 2 years. Busy. I have been busy. Yeah, just carrying on being a mum to my little boy, which has been gorgeous, and getting to know him and for him growing and kind of getting to learn each other and being around each other. And yeah, he's an absolute joy to be with. And lots of writing, lots of reading, I'm still carrying on with wheelchair basketball, which I'm absolutely loving. Been coaching that for about 8, 9 years now, which I can't believe that I've got to an age where I'm now like, oh yes, I've been doing things for like 10, 15 years. And I'm like,
wild to say. Well, and family, for people listening that are newer to meeting Katie, Katie has done incredible work for advocating for, you correct me if I flub it up, Katie, but really better support for disabled people in many different capacities, for people in wheelchairs, for autistic people. You've been before Parliament, right? In advocating for this. I mean, very, very impressive stuff.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, very, very busy person. A lot of the work I've been doing over the last 3 years now has been specifically around accessibility of cancer services. So anything from being asked to come into screening, and if you did or if you didn't come in for screening for whatever reason, all the way through to kind of coming in with symptoms, getting diagnosed, going through various stages of treatment. We also spoke to a few people who had experiences or family members and loved ones going through palliative care as well.
Mm.
So when I say cancer services, I mean like
The whole
the full breadth
spectrum.
of things
Mhm.
and the support that they did or didn't get throughout
Mhm.
and what that kind of looked like. So I've done that with neurodivergent and disabled people and have done that with a project called Transaware Cancer Care. So my biggest thing, I think, from a personal point of view and from a research point of view is just making healthcare generally more accessible to people, more
Mhm.
validating,
Mhm.
dare I say, also places of joy as well. I was thinking about this the other day about I've been doing so many years of like access work
Mhm.
and, I think striving so much to get something that is appropriate, that is accessible, that means something, that is valuable of our times and our spoons and resources as disabled people, trans people, otherwise minoritized people. I forget, and I have a feeling that other advocates and activists and researchers and whatever area people are working on is that joy is very central to accessibility.
Mm.
So that's something I've been thinking about the last couple of months as well, whilst I started my PhD in a similar kind of area.
It's a really interesting and important point because when anyone's coming in to access services, whether it's for physical health or mental health, maybe for access for financial support, there's a lot of grief, there's a lot of pain, there's a lot of fear that
Mm,
accompanies that. And naturally, as people, we need wins. We need to
mm,
feel
mm,
like,
mm,
hey, I can go in and I can have a win. And I imagine joy, feeling hopeful, all of that kind of fits in the I need to be able to also access a win. And particularly for some of these services, say someone who has had lifelong OCD, not realizing they have OCD, they come in, they're afraid. They're afraid that there's
mm.
not going to be a win. They're afraid that this treatment isn't going to help. They're afraid that they're just the screw up. And so it's a pretty shitty place to be. It is scary. And I think joy, yes, is often not what we think when we think about anything from a medical model, because the medical model is like, oh no, this is uncomfortable and a nuisance or problematic for us.
Mm,
Not this is you have strengths. How can we amplify them kind of model? So, yeah, it's a really good point.
mm, mm, mm. And yeah, I think that brings me to another thing is even when you do research that critiques, dismantles, disorientates, however you want to word it, the kind of medical model of things, you're still perpetuating that. Or at least I found that I have been doing that. So there was work around the trans aware cancer care that we were doing. And, there was themes. We were theming people's experiences of cancer services. And then it took me a little while to just think, hold up, why are we theming queer experiences? Like that doesn't make any sense to me.
Mhm.
LGBTQIA plus people have dismantled, reshaped, whatever the boxes of what sexuality, gender, relationality is, to then be put into boxes
Mhm.
within research is madness, right? That's
Mhm.
fucking insane.
Right.
So there was a big hoo-ha about the theming and, myself and the other trans community researchers felt the way we did about it, and other members of the team felt the way that they felt about it. And we also had a lot of support as well with other members of the team. But I suppose there's this thing about doing research that also perpetuates harm. Or even if it doesn't perpetuate harm, it's still perpetuating a system that relies on normativity.
Mhm.
So yeah, so I think constantly having to question is a really difficult thing, but it's a really important part of
Yeah.
research and activism and various other things, definitely.
It's a great point because again, and we say this a lot when we're talking about OCD, if we zoom out, we can get a different perspective, right? And so you zoom out and you go, we're trading one box for another. That's what
Mm,
it, right? But then research also wants to reduce things down to a petri dish because it wants to know if the thing that you're studying, that you're hypothesizing that you're doing is really the variable causing or creating a mechanism here for the change that you're trying to study. And so you have to block out these other variables, but then automatically it is reinforcing the sides of this box, right? That you have to fit
Mm.
to this box that really doesn't, at least in research, something that we talk about when we go over OCD research is for a lot of us, none of us live in this petri dish life. It's many different things but for them to
Mm.
be able to study it, then it has to get reduced down to like, when does it ever look like just this in the wild? I mean, I don't know.
Mm.
So it's a challenge. But as you're talking about research, it reminds me that's another thing you're doing. So Katie is in a doctoral program, and we were chit-chatting before we started recording. Would love to hear about that process because y'all, Katie is making a name for themselves, already has for many years, runs a very important advocacy, not only within their country, but online, has a really powerful presence. We're going to talk about an article you recently published, but I would love to hear about what that process was like getting into graduate school and starting the PhD work.
Mhm. Oh, so much. Yeah, applying for a PhD, I'm going to say specifically in the UK because that's where I'm at, but I can imagine it's across the world, is a lot.
Mhm.
There's a lot of administrative things, there's a lot of organizing, remembering all these other executive function things that if you're ADHD and autistic like me, and also have OCD and other mental health issues, that's
A lot.
not always your favorite or best thing to do. So I think I applied, or I tried to apply once, and I just got several steps through it. And I thought I just can't do the last 30 steps because there are so many steps,
Right.
right? Yeah. So it's been, yeah, 2 years in the making, I suppose, to get on to my PhD program. Thankfully, my first supervisor is Stephen Capp, who some people will probably know as an
Mhm.
exceedingly good autism researcher.
Mhm.
So really, really chuffed to be with him. And Amine Gomez, who is an autism researcher as well, and Chris Papadopoulos, who is at a different university, but I actually do, again, like brilliant mind, ADHD, and does a lot of work around health policy.
Mhm.
And we actually co-founded Autistic Substance Use Network together, which I can go a bit more on in a minute. But yeah, really fantastic team, super chuffed. But the thing is, I knew two of these people already,
Yeah.
right? So that cuts out quite a lot of control, right?
Yeah.
So it just makes it a lot easier. But also, and I've written on this recently around, how do you decide on a supervisor who's knowledgeable in your area? Maybe they need to be close to you. So University of Portsmouth's just down the road from me, and that's my university. That's where I did my undergraduate, where I did my master's, but also is a safe person for you. So I say trans, non-binary, but it's a bit more complicated than that. But for all other people need to know is that I need to be spoken. My pronouns are they, them, and I need to be spoken about in a kind of gender neutral way. And then obviously having autistic needs, ADHD needs, but also not just needs, but like embodiments, culture, the way of being, like I don't change who I am depending on who I'm talking to. I talk to the milkman the same way I talk to my mother, the same way I talk to my boss, the same way I talk to you. Like,
Yeah.
everybody gets the same version of Katie, pretty much. I mean, when I
Yes.
work with kids, they don't swear, but apart from that, it's literally exactly the same. Like, that's just who I am. So yeah, so that's really interesting. That's really interesting at university.
Sure.
I need someone who's going to gel with that, and they need to gel with that too. There's no point, at me being supervised by someone who's got a stick up their ass. That's just it's not really going to be how it works.
Mhm.
But also, I need to be safe and valued and looked after in that way. And that's a really difficult thing if you don't know your supervisors.
Right.
I'd worked with Stephen previously, mentoring one of his master's students who was doing work around autistic people being able to access gender identity healthcare in the UK.
Mhm.
And Stephen was aware of my work and said, Katie, I know you're doing a master's and you're also pregnant, but did you also want to be a mentor for this MSc student? And of course I said yes. because that's the kind of thing I do.
Mhm.
And then eventually published Harley Bruce's paper, me, Stephen, and Harley together. So that was really brilliant.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was very lucky to know who I wanted to be and where I wanted to be, which is a massive hurdle, anyways.
Right.
But then it's the paperwork and it's the funding and the bending over backwards to be taken seriously by
Mhm.
funders. And in a really weird way, and I was talking about this with, I'm not saying all my friends are autistic, but I would say all my friends are autistic. With other autism researchers who are in Portsmouth with me, there's quite a few of us, which is gorgeous
Sure.
around, playing the disability card, whatever we might feel about that. And I'm waving my hands around dramatically,
Mhm.
which you won't be able to see, but playing this disability card. So we need people to take us seriously as people with neurodivergence, which absolutely includes mental health needs as well. But also, there's also a swing back on that for like DEI checklists, right?
Mhm.
And yeah, I'm massively aware that DEI is like, "Oh, yeah."
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
In the US and the UK, I appreciate it's totally and utterly appreciate that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But if there's ways that that can also be helpful for disabled, neurodivergent, whoever people getting, I don't know if getting better seen is quite the words I'm looking for, but getting what you need,
Support.
yes,
Yeah.
then use that all
Yeah.
day long, all day long.
Yeah.
If someone was listening to this and thought, "Oh, I feel like I need to have some kind of validation from something from somewhere," this is it. This is your sign.
Yeah.
Oh, I shouldn't go in for that. No, you should. You
Yeah.
should. You absolutely. You belong there. You should be here. I wrote a chapter. See if I can find it actually. A chapter on ethics applications
Okay.
and the inaccessibility of ethics applications
Mhm.
in UK universities. And I think the biggest thing that I wanted people to get from that was that your work matters.
Mhm.
Okay. And the PhD, if you're doing a PhD or you're doing postgraduate research, or even if you're doing early career research, the research is yours
Mhm.
and it matters and
Mhm.
you matter.
Mhm.
So ask for what you need. I wrote it a lot better than that.
I like that though. And what I will say is when I think about, say, for my kids, like if they have a support need, even if it's a milder support need,
Mm,
could they do it without that? Yes. I mean, the reality is, could I get to work without my car? Sure. But it's gonna be quite a walk. Okay. And
mm,
so it's okay. Sometimes I feel like there's almost this guilty feeling
mm,
if you're like, "I could use the support, but really that would just be more convenient." Okay, well, people buy things, they build things, and they ask for things all the time for convenience. Katie and I were joking around about bookmark settings you can set in the computer, like tabs and stuff like, right? That's convenient if you bookmark something, it makes it easier to find. Just like an actual bookmark with a real book or a little sticky
mm,
tab. But yeah, I mean, there's almost this guilt of I should only ask for support if this is really, really hard. And
mm.
if I could do it, should I, can I, is it okay? I get that feeling at least. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's really interesting I think that relates to another complete shit show that's going on in the UK at the moment around, we call it the benefit system in the UK. I really don't like that we call it that.
Mhm.
So around disabled people being able to get payments from the government every month. And one of them is called Personal Independence Payment, but we call it PIP because we love an acronym.
Mhm.
And there's all these conversations about how many people fake disability or whatever. I laugh because it's just laughable,
Mm.
and the rate of that and how much apparently this is costing taxpayers, even though PIP isn't actually an out of work benefit anyway. So actually, a lot of those taxpayers are PIP
Yeah.
PIP payments as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
Oh, like literally, I have to laugh because it just pisses me off so much. So there's this understanding within our government, and I have no doubt that it's elsewhere, that there is limited resources.
Mhm.
And I think when it comes to people asking for help, getting help in whatever way, there's always this thought of, but I'm not the worst off, which is an admirable way to think about your life and go about your life. I am not the person who needs the most amount of help. I'd really love if this help could go to this group of people. Perfect. I love that. It's exceedingly honorable. But things don't work like that. It's not a piece of pie, you know. There's not like there's 30 pieces of pie, and if I take up one of the pies, somebody else doesn't get to eat. That's not how this works.
Right.
And I see that as well within kind of this imposter syndrome. I see that with other postgraduate researchers all the time. This, oh, how could I take up space there when that space could be for somebody else? Okay, but why is somebody else's position there more important than your position being? And I see also a lot of people apologizing for a whole host of things that I just sit there and I listen and I take it all in and I go, I wonder, sometimes I'll ask people what it is that you think that you can't take up space,
Right.
that you don't have anything to say on this subject, that what you do have to say on this subject isn't, well, you know, maybe I'm not the most qualified to say this and maybe this and maybe that. All of that to say really is that if you're neurodivergent, any kind of person really, is that you get to live your life.
Right.
So do the thing.
Right.
You know, as long as you're being safe and you're looking after yourself, then do it.
Right.
You know, you don't gatekeep yourself. There's so many other people who are gatekeeping us from doing stuff. Don't do it to yourself.
Yeah.
Oh, please.
Multiple things can be true at once. A person, your neighbor, your friend, your family member can need space, and you too. And like you're saying, it's innate that we all have needs. There's no shame in that. There's no shame in that. You're going to find bad actors anywhere that are trying to take advantage of different systems, different benefits, quote unquote, different things. But the vast majority and the conception of different programs is because there are legitimate needs that weren't being supported. And just because the program exists does not mean all the support needs are getting met for the people that qualify. But somehow, like you said, it's not rationing a piece of pie to say that, yeah, this person maybe has more support needs, but you still have needs as a person. And the impact it makes, you're more likely to have bigger support needs down the road if you're not getting what could have been just a helpful support earlier on. And so, yeah, it gets very, very complicated.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, you're important people. You are an important person.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's it. There's no ifs, there's no buts, there's no you're an important person if you do this or if you do that or if you live in a certain way, you are an important person. Look after yourselves. And if other people are willing and organizations and the government, oh thank God, like, you know, please, yes, then you are absolutely worth doing that for.
Yeah.
I just if people could take anything away from anything I say at any point in my life, you are worth being here. We love you being here and ask what you need. That's it.
Yes, that's beautiful. I appreciate that so much. And as we are diving in, again, Katie and I were like, oh my gosh, how long has this month been? But we were like, yeah, it's still Autism Acceptance Month. I wanted to mention because on April 2nd, as we talked about in our past podcasts, it's not like, oh, here's your day. Okay, moving on. But it can feel that way sometimes, right? But I do want to know, on April 2nd, you published an article and you sent me over a link where I could preview that abstract. But I would love for you to share about this publication you authored because I think it's fantastic and I want the world here to be able to hear about it.
Thank you. Yeah, so myself, Chris Papadopoulos, who I was talking about earlier, Tanya Adkin and David Gray Hammond did a survey. So David led the survey probably a year, 2 years ago. The memory is hazy.
It happened. That's all they need to know. It happened.
Yeah, you know, the things happened, you know, within the last 10 years. And what an amazing response to it. So David Gray Hammond, who runs Emergent Divergence, if you want to know stuff about, oh God, so many things, but David does a lot of work around schizophrenia, mental health, institutionalization, mad pride. Oh yeah, just go check out their stuff. And he created a survey to talk about autistic people's substance use and experiences of substance use services, and had just over 500 people respond to that survey online,
That's really
which
good.
is which is amazing.
Yeah.
And basically, that was picked up by Chris Papadopoulos,
Hmm.
and we've been working on digging through all this information. Let me tell you, all this data.
I bet.
So it's like quantitative. So that's all the numbers,
Uh-huh.
statistics, percentages, all of this kind of caper. Really not my kind of thing. Chris took care of quite a lot of that. And I took care of the qualitative stuff. What are the words that people used to tell their stories to us? And one of the things, one of many of the outputs, we're just waiting on various other things from other papers and stuff like that, other journals, was our newest journal, came out on the 2nd of April, through Autism in Adulthood. And I'll actually get the name right of it, shall I? That'd be good, wouldn't it?
I have it. I can say improving substance use
Oh.
services for autistic adults, insights and recommendations for autistic adults.
That's it. That's
Yes.
it. Perfect. I should know the name of it really, but I don't.
No, don't should on yourself, Katie. Don't should on yourself.
Somebody else had it. It's good. And the nice thing about the research
Mhm.
is that we are a mixed team of neurodivergent. As I was saying about David, and this is something that is known. David is schizophrenic and various other mental health issues, also OCD as well, actually.
Mhm.
Another brilliant person for you to talk to, I'm sure.
Mhm.
And Tanya is also ADHD autistic. Chris is ADHD. I'm ADHD autistic. Lots of mental health variations
Uh-huh.
and chronic illness. And thank you very much. And,
Yeah.
but also throughout the team, and I won't be any more specific than these couple of words, but have experiences of substance use and substance use services. And there's the whole adage of, within disability activism, but I know that the neurodiversity movement has definitely been gun ho with this around nothing about us without us.
Mhm.
And I think that's really important within autism research to have autistic people running that, or ADHD and ADHD people do that, OCD and OCD people leading on that, or at least heavily consulted in that kind of work.
Mhm.
But also I feel like it's really important to have that lived experience.
Mhm.
So not just we are autistic people doing work around autistic people's experiences of substance use services, but also that we have some of our own experiences.
Mhm.
Now, a lot of people might say, oh, but Katie, and they have said it, I was there, Oh, Katie, doesn't that mean that you bring bias to your work? And my first answer to that question is, why is it that autistic people always bring bias to our work, but non-autistic people don't bring bias to autism research? That's the
Mm.
first question. It's always a rhetorical question because I let people ponder that and take that
Uh-huh.
home with them and unpack that in their own time, unless they want to pay me to do that with them. That is my gift to
Yes,
you,
yeah,
right?
I will have their email
Yeah.
listed. Feel free to reach out to Katie if you wanna hire them. They're a little busy though, so please, be
Yeah,
mindful of the
so we'll see how
schedule.
we go. We'll
Yeah,
see how
yeah,
we
yeah,
go.
yeah.
So, yeah, but I kind of always half make that joke because I'm like, there's a lot of autistic advocates and a lot of marginalized people in general are kind of considered these free encyclopedias of,
Mhm.
Black experiences, Native experiences, disabled experiences, OCD experiences.
Mhm.
And you think, yeah, brilliant. We do have a lot of information around these areas, but you really need to pay us for our times because not only is this a great deal of knowledge, but also it's a great deal of our lives that we are giving to you. And
Yeah,
this should not be given for free.
right.
But anyways, back to my point. So I was saying about actually how lived experience in the work that I do and the way that I understand research and social research is that it brings an added layer. It brings more depth. It brings more texture, however it is you might want to describe it.
Mhm.
It can bring things to life. So I'm not saying that all research around this area has to be done with lived experience because quite frankly, we could do with all the allies and accomplices as we can in autism research. But there is something there that is very powerful to be able to bring your own experiences to that kind of work. It's powerful for you as an individual researcher, but it's powerful to the research as well. And also, what I will say about that, and this supposed idea of bias,
Mhm.
is that David is a very well respected person in what he does.
Mhm.
He does a lot of activism, a lot of advocacy, mentoring, you name it. The man is also very, very busy and he does a lot of amazing work. So, because he is a trusted public figure, people want to share their stories.
Mhm.
And I see this in trans autistic research as well.
Mhm.
When I was doing my master's and I was doing narratives of trans and non binary autistic people,
Mhm.
And, some of the participants said to me, I wouldn't have shared as freely with you if I didn't know you were trans
Mhm.
and I didn't know you were autistic.
Mhm.
And one of them said, I wouldn't have signed up for the work at all.
Mhm.
And that was a person that the interviews were supposed to be an hour long.
Right.
Well, so this was a person who spoke to me for about 2.5 hours.
Aw.
So, and they were like, yeah, but if you weren't living at the intersection that you're at, I wouldn't have spoken. So this is like 2.5 hours worth of their story, connection, community, bringing words to stuff that they might not have brought words to before. There's definitely a cathartic community building element to
Yeah.
to the kind of research that I'm involved with.
Mhm.
And several of those participants I still talk to online.
Yeah.
I've done various bits of work with, or they put work my way and I put work their way. So when I say community building, I don't just mean I spoke to someone 2 hours ago, like 5 years ago, and like, oh, we're all,
Right.
I mean, it has the ability to be long lasting.
Right. Katie, maybe I'm being bold, but I kind of feel like that's what I have with you a bit. That we started talking years ago, and when I catch up with you, I'm like yesterday. We were saying this. It's like yesterday, but because there's that safety. And I think that just even when you were describing the difficulty with graduate school, finding a supervisor that you can have that conversation with, I think it's one of the things we have to think about too when we think about research. Is the person going to feel safe to be able to unmask, to be able to speak or verbalize or share their experience? And it's one of those things where research has not always been and continues to have room for growth in recognizing stigmas that, though may not have been intended to be harmful, have received feedback regarding how harmful it can be. And so it's that challenging space, but I'm sure it's such a treasure when you are getting a chance to sit down and these folks are like, but I'm an important person too, right? Like I get to be visible and I don't have to be scared. It's vulnerable, so it might feel scary in that way, but also I'm safe to be visible.
Yeah, which is a really beautiful thing, just like in life,
Right.
let alone, research.
Right.
And I think there's like a lot of research that's still going on in the UK and probably other places too around why don't we use the word underserved populations quite a lot, which I'm not wholly keen on myself, especially within healthcare research. Why do these groups of people not want to talk to researchers? I think, well, but look at your research team.
Right.
Can you look at your research
Right.
team?
Right.
Like, why is it that Black people and people of color don't want to talk to us?
Right.
Because they're not in any way represented on your research team, your funders board, you name it. There's not in any way representation there. And then like the Roma traveling community, polyamorous, whatever group of people you might want to talk to. Oh, they just really don't want to talk to us. And I was like, also, the academy it shouldn't own this fucking information, right?
Right.
Just because you are in research doesn't mean that you get to know.
Yeah.
You don't get to know.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Some things you just don't. It's not your place to know.
Right.
No,
Right.
it's not your information to have, let alone is it your information that you'd slap your name all over and put in a journal or something.
Yeah.
Or whatever else it might be. And I think to bring that back to what I was talking about doing stuff in, and actually what you were talking about having safer spaces for people to do research in, have conversations in, whatever you might want to call it, is also that there's a lot of cultural elements
Yes.
that I think a lot of non-autistic autism researchers still don't understand.
Yes.
So when we were talking before this and we were talking about spoons,
Yes.
there's going to be a lot of autism researchers and a lot of researchers on neurodivergence in general who don't understand
Spoons.
where the spoon theory comes from, what that means, what are you talking about when you say that, and various other things, and even terms that we don't necessarily even have words for.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I'm also chronically ill. So when I ask someone who I know is also chronically ill if they're all right, and know that the answer they give me is bullshit, I'm all right. Okay, so what's going on then? Come on, let's unpack this.
Right.
So what's actually going on here? Yeah. So
Yeah.
there's all of this. So when people talk about bias, that really, really pisses me off because there is just it's such a flattened understanding of what transness means, or what being autistic means, or what being OCD means. There's this very flat idea, and you alluded to it earlier about it just being, well, the OCD in the
Yeah.
petri dish,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, that's it. Like,
Yeah.
oh, and of course that's bias. So,
Right.
yeah.
Well,
Um,
in the same breath, researchers will talk about the heterogeneity of OCD, which most
mm,
people are going to be like, what does that mean? And that's
this-
just a really cerebral way to describe that it's unique and presents differently in different situations. And not that unlike, say, a spectrum or so many other things,
mhm,
right? Where we could say, there's bias about one thing or the other, but you're also saying, like, this is unique and it shows up, though we could say it functions and has some pattern recognition to the function, it still shows up and exists in different ways across different people. And so it becomes
mm,
one of those really hard things where we go, well, how do we study this and reduce variables, but not introduce a bias? And then it is really interesting if you think about, yeah, well, if you have lived experience, perhaps you could be biased, but don't you have a bias if you don't have that experience as well? You were making that point, and it's such a good one because even within the autistic community, you and I were discussing last time you were on the show about how even different level support needs or functioning levels for autistic people, there can be bias. You had, I want to say, if I recall, you had said something to the effect of like, "Oh yeah, I leveled up" or something in on
yeah.
right,
Wow. That's a memory. Yeah.
and you got flambéed a little bit because
I got full El Scorchio, mate. Let me tell you, in that support group. For those who don't remember this, and I almost didn't until Nicole just brought it up. Yeah, I was talking about being in a support group, and you get levels. And so when I got my autism diagnosis, and I was whatever level I am, and then I just said to everyone, "Oh, I've leveled up," and it was
uh-huh,
supposed to be ha ha ha. It wasn't particularly funny, but it was supposed to be in jest, humorous,
uh-huh,
within a group of autistic people. Yeah,
uh-huh.
and I got my ass handed to me.
Yes. Well, and it's one of those things where, if we look within any community, whether we're talking about a marginalized community, just broadly within the allistic community, just because you have something that unites you doesn't mean there's not an array of different feelings, thoughts,
Mm,
expectations, right? So for you, I think again, you had said and I won't repeat it too much, you guys, because you can go listen to it, but Katie was expressing how they like to describe things or even maybe sometimes themselves as weird, but people get really prickly. Some people are like, yeah, I get you. I read what you're saying. Other people are like, you are demeaning people, or they can come up with anything. I'm just pulling that out of my ass,
mm.
but we know how people are.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so what happens is it's hard to have an actual conversation then with people, let alone make some of those advancements and much needed progress in research and in support because we get caught up on how we're saying things. And I'm not saying people can't be offended or feel very strongly and passionately,
Mm,
but also how can we not lose sight of the goal, which is we need improvement here. And the fact that we don't agree, okay, doesn't that show that we need improvement to kind of help be able to access an ability to describe whether it's autistic experience or anything and have that represented better in the research? Because we don't get anywhere with it being where it's at. It's not making progress
mm.
there. But then again, we're getting caught up because, oh my goodness, you said weird and you've leveled up and the
Yeah,
spiral
yeah.
ensues.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. 100%. I agree with that, and I kind of don't agree with that in some ways because, like you say, language is important.
Yeah.
But I think what the vital part that a lot of people, I perceive online anyways, is that people, and I put myself in that because I'm also a person.
Yeah. An important
um,
person as we
we are all important people, Nicole. Come on. I
that's
said it. It was like the first thing I said. Come on. So, yeah, just I see a lot in autistic spaces online talking about diversity and talking about this, talking about that. And then so many of us don't practice what we preach. And I certainly don't do it consistently. This is something I'm still working myself. Is that understanding that people are coming from different places with this, which sounds like, oh, Katie, of course they're coming from different places with this.
Right.
And it should be that simple, but it's not, because especially where I'm white and I have various other privileges, it's very easy for me to think that my experience is some kind of universal experience, the autistic experience, the trans experience, and not necessarily even just in a very explicit way of thinking that and a very direct way of thinking that, but also in a, well, of course that's known knowledge. Well, of course you know that. You should know that. Or all these expectations that I might put on other people online and various other places to know, appreciate, understand, and also value the same information, knowledge, and processes that I do. And it's just complete nonsense. Why do we do that to each other? You should be using this word, and you should be using that word, and you should be using this word. I appreciate totally that words are exceedingly important, but there sometimes seems to be a lot of dogpiling online and various other things. Just like this conversation could have gone a completely different way if there wasn't this standard that we're telling non-autistic people not to do to us.
Right.
But us as autistic people are going to do it to other autistic people.
Right.
And that really grates me up the wrong way.
Well, and within so many different communities, there's just going to be an array of ways to think about things. I think often, I don't know if you've ever found this dynamic. Well, I'm kind of laughing at myself. Of course, I think you're going to have found this dynamic. And again, not to generalize, but I'm generalizing this because it's part of the human condition. But say you're having a conversation with your son or your partner, you say something, they say something back, you're like, they didn't hear what I said, right? Or they didn't understand the directive or request or whatever the thing is. And so you say it again, and then they maybe get a little irritated and they say what they said again. And then you kind of have a rise in temperatures that can kind of ping pong back and forth. And, one of the things I will say, and I get involved in it too, y'all, so I'm not exempt from that. But when it's other people, it's easier to see the dynamic than when I'm engaging in it myself. And
Yeah,
so,
100%.
and so one of the things I'll say is, often when people are repeating themselves, it's because they're not feeling heard. And sometimes when we land on different spaces, or whether it's language or something else, and we have different experiences, and this can certainly come up with privilege as well, right? Where we go, well, that wasn't my experience, and I'm trying to understand, and it's difficult to have this conversation because the person I'm talking to has no reference point for the conversation subject we're having. So often, we're not able to really hear each other. And what happens is people talk over each other, then people kind of draw a line in the sand, and you're on that side of things or you're on this side of things, and it doesn't resolve the issue. I don't think anybody walks away feeling warm and fuzzy and content with the resolution there. Instead, it's like, see, this is why. It's a kind of a double down into creating this us them mentality.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah,
And
100%.
it's a struggle, but like, maybe this is controversial, but I don't feel like it should be. We don't have to agree, but we can respect and listen and actively listen, not just hear so that we can build a defense for when the person takes a breath or stops talking, but actually listen, and we can say why we disagree. And that's important, but there is a lot more of a tendency to flambe. And it's challenging when you're trying to get things done, trying to improve research and representation and different things, because it goes so quickly from, it's weird, up to the flambe level,
Yeah.
So I'm kind of rambling about it, but hopefully that made sense.
Yeah. No, I appreciate what you're saying. I think that's why there are so many issues with coalition building and stuff for disability justice and various other things is, it could be its own other podcast in itself, for goodness sake.
It could be.
But there's too many people who want to be correct about something, as if truth is universal, right? When it's not, actually. It's not. It's not any of those things. And I find myself challenging myself a lot more. This has only been happening in the last couple of years, and I wish I'd been doing it sooner, but I'm doing it now.
Mhm.
It's just sitting in my discomfort around a few things, especially around like racism, various other things like that, and not being so quick to defend myself or defend my ideas around things
Mhm.
because, I'm 35 now and I don't want to be the kind of, as I get into my 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, I don't want to be the kind of person who's like, no, this is it.
Mhm.
This is it. This is the thought that I've always had about this particular issue or this group of people or what I perceive to be this group of people or whatever else. I don't want to be like that. I want to be the kind of person who says, that's really interesting. So when my son at some point turns around to me and my husband and says, oh, you've been using that word, but I really prefer that you would not use that word. Or,
Mhm.
we don't really talk about those things anymore. Or, da, 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 da. I wouldn't be the kind of person who's like, well, back in my day, it used to be,
Yeah.
oh, you can't say anything these days. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I just actually, it's not. And I talk about this within cancer research as well, around practitioners being afraid of getting it wrong. But what if we flipped that and said, we're not afraid of getting it wrong, we're excited about getting it right,
Yeah.
and what that means for challenging and progressing practice and knowledge and all these other different things. So
Yeah.
I think I've gone from research that was like working within research and reading research and understanding research. And when I say research, I don't just mean like academic, I mean like blogs,
Right.
poetry,
Right.
blah, 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 other ways that people create and share knowledge, right?
Right.
From just being something that is around knowledge and sharing that information to it centering joy, connection, love, and all of these kind of things. And those are not the kind of words that you tend to put in research. You definitely don't put that in research as a psychologist. Or let me tell you that I guess someone looks at the uni and you don't put those words in cancer research.
Right.
And it is the very places that you don't put those words or those meanings or those understandings, frameworks, whatever you might want to call it, that actually is the places that are crying out for that.
Right. Yeah. That's such a good point. Something I thought of as you were saying that is earlier we were describing how people almost apologetically err on the side of not taking up space. But in this
Mm,
situation, the back in my day kind of scenario, well, we may struggle to validate our own needs in the current space. We're very quick to defend the space behind us. We're defending the road traveled thus far. And so I
mm,
may not ask exactly for what I need, but what you need to understand is I learned it this way, and this is how this has been. And I've tried to do these things, and I'm a good person. And I feel like that's what I hear. It's like a cry out for validation, you know,
mm,
in some
mm.
sense. For example, if words change and your son were to come to you and say, "Oh, we don't really use that anymore." The validation would be like, "Well, I'm not being insensitive. See, I want you to like verify for me because in the past, this is how I operated and I was actually very good at helping lead that charge and et cetera." You're not hearing the person. They're saying, "What I'm hearing from you right now doesn't feel like it fits or is comfortable for me, et cetera."
Mm.
But it's almost that, "No, I need you to understand I'm actually a good person." It's like when somebody tries to prove like, "No, I'm actually an
Eh,
ally. Actually, I love
oh
black
God.
people and I love this and I
Oh
love
my
that,"
God,
right?
literally. Oh,
Yeah.
it's so cringe. So, so cringe. This is the problem I have with allyship, or at least the word and the general understanding of allyship to any marginalized group of people. I take it for trans people at the moment because of the complete bullshit that's going on in the UK at the moment.
Mhm.
So, I'm a good person. Yeah, as if you can't be transphobic or do unintentionally or intentionally transphobic things because you're a good person.
Mhm.
What's that all about? Why, why is it that people do that? But I'm a good person. I'd never do that. Okay, but it's not your intentions. Oh, well, I didn't intend it to be that. But can you see how you're centering yourself again? If someone said to you, I've told you for the 9 millionth time that my pronouns are he, him. Oh, and then they tell you their life story. Oh, they're like, oh, but yeah, one of my cousins twice removed, and his son was a trans man, and da, 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 da. I don't need to hear all that gump. I just need you to get it right for me. So yeah, it's a really, really weird defensive tactic for people to scream that they're not bad people, as if you were even saying that to begin with, because we can all engage in really shitty behavior, in like really shitty behavior, whether we mean to, not mean to, whatever. But
Mhm.
it's having the good grace that when people challenge you about these things, that you sit there and go, "Oh yeah, no, that was really crap," and apologize and take account for it. Like it's not actually that difficult. Like it's actually really easy, and then we all
Yeah.
move on as better people from there.
Yeah. What I will say is, I think as a marriage and family therapist, I see this dynamic across so many different settings. So, for example,
Mm,
where your intention was good, the other person didn't appreciate your intention. You didn't necessarily communicate or even understand maybe sometimes what your intention was, but you knew it wasn't
mm,
to be a shitty person. And the other person is now upset. So now you feel resentful. For example, I don't know, take a couple. I want you to.
I bet you get this a lot in
Yeah.
family therapy. Oh
Yes.
my goodness, yes.
Yes. And your job is to take out the trash, and I have my jobs and duties around the house, but I'm always reminding you to take out the trash, which makes it kind of feel like it's my job, right? And so maybe this is a conversation that you guys have had at some point or at a recurring point, right? And so then the person maybe forgets to take out the trash, but they go and maybe they get you some flowers or they do the laundry or something like that because they forgot to take out the trash again, and this has been a recurring thing. Well, you might come out and be like, "You still didn't take out the trash?" And they're like, "But you're not appreciating that I did the laundry." Well, I appreciate that you did the laundry, but I asked you to take out the trash. Right. But I forgot, and I'm gonna do it, but to make up for it, I did the laundry. Well, I didn't want you to do the laundry,
Mm,
and so things get missed, and then people start to feel resentful, and they're like, "Well, I'm damned if I do, I'm damned if I don't. Why do I even
oh,
try?"
darling, please.
Right? And so I see that dynamic across so many things where people will espouse, I didn't mean for it to be that way. Okay. Well, guess what? We have the ability to hear whether we meant for something to go a certain way or not, that it had this effect, cause and effect, and we can
Mm,
apologize or take responsibility or learn from it. We have some choices we can make. And it doesn't even have to be more controversial than that in some of these situations. But
mm,
instead, it's like, well, no, I tried and my intention were good. And I actually felt bad. Felt bad that I forgot to take out the trash. That whole situation would have gone a lot better if you were like, "You know what? I totally forgot." And I bet that's so frustrating for you. It's frustrating for me, and I feel badly about it. I know it's not the same, but I chose to do the laundry because I'm feeling bad, but I just want you to know, like, it's okay if you're upset too. Like, I get that
mm,
because
mm.
I didn't follow through. Had that been the conversation, would the argument even ensued? I don't know, I guess it depends on the person, but even if some kind of leftover feelings were there, I bet it would have gone 10 out of 10 better than it would have gone if you were just not communicating. And
Mm,
and so there's sometimes this fear about having these conversations, and a lot of times people aren't going to agree. And isn't that in some ways a beautiful thing? Not when it comes to ignorance or whatever, but
mm,
isn't it a kind of a beautiful opportunity to learn and grow? And
mm,
we could just even approach like, how can we make this better? And we're sometimes going to think we made it better and then look back a couple years from now and go, well, that was a shitty move. That just totally took us down the wrong path. And so we need to course correct, but we have to be able to have those conversations to make productive choices. And I see that in research as well.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Tension is a really interesting one in research, yeah.
So can I ask you about, because I know that you have been working on this symposium and you were talking about how we can rally and even get different people together, teams together, thinking about different important topics. And I know you were telling me you were looking at the intersection of sociology and just different aspects of experience to create this symposium. And I would love if you could tell the fan listening more what that's about.
Yeah, thanks. So myself, two other PhD student friends of mine, Robin Skyer and Frayden Manastranio. It is the first time I have said their name out loud, so I'm hoping that's correct. Yes, we are creating a symposium. It's a one-day symposium, which will be hybrid as well. So as soon as I've got the link for that, I'll send that over, Nicole. Will be free to attend. It is with postgraduate researchers and PhD students in mind, but we are literally happy for anyone to attend. It's no problem. If you can't make it on the day as well, let me tell you what the day is.
Oh,
I believe
sure.
it's the 11th of June. So if you can't make it on the day online or face to face, it will also be recorded as well. It's is it 9:30 till 4:30? I think it is. It's going to be a long old day, but it's going to be brilliant. It's going to be different researchers, activists, advocates, people who sit in all three of those spaces, talking about the intersections of sociology with crit theory, MAD studies, and critical disability studies.
Mm.
And you might think, oh my goodness, what is all that? That all sounds a bit intense. And it is intense, but it's brilliant.
Yeah.
It's basically around mad pride, crit pride, around taking ideas about disabled people and disabled embodiments and our experiences and creating our own thing within research.
Hmm.
So very similar to queer theory, where that's used by a lot of LGBTQIA plus researchers
Hmm.
and people who do research in that area. It's that same kind of feel. And critical disabilities studies is a critique of medical understandings of disability. Obviously, I'm summarizing here. There are three very, very interesting areas of research and very diverse within them as well. So, yeah, so we've got some amazing people
Hmm.
joining us for that, including Robert Chapman, who's from University of Durham. Some people may have read their book, which is The Empire of Normality.
Hmm.
They'll be talking about mad radicals,
Mm.
17th century, and how that affects the idea of the neurodiversity movement now, and plenty of other people besides doing panels, various other things. There will be BSL interpretation. I appreciate that's not very helpful for our US friends, but we've got transcripts and captions, various other things. We're going to try and make it as accessible as possible.
Perfect.
Yeah, so that's us. So we've been very busy organizing that,
Yeah.
which is really, really cool. We have a Blue Sky account as well, which is Crip Mad Symposium.
Okay.
Of course, like what else are you going to call it? That's us. So feel free to follow us on that.
Yeah.
And that will have all the links, all the various things, and I will send them to you anyways, Nicole. Yeah, so I've got a few conferences coming up this year, but that's the one I'm organizing, which is super cool.
Yes. Yes. And again,
Really, really cool.
you're doing so much executive functioning that I'm tired just hearing it, and I'm
I
impressed.
literally, I'm tired talking about it.
It's good to know that it's coming up so people can mark their calendars, or if you're listening to this, whether it's days, months, years after the recording,
That's true.
look for a recorded version of that, or follow up with the Blue Sky handle and see kind of where things are at now. Speaking to our future, I'm talking to the
Mm.
future, Katie.
Oh my, I can't even deal with the present.
The one other thing I had on my list, and I for sure wanted to just even mention, and you referenced different styles of writing and sharing and communicating, including poetry, and it made me think of the book I Didn't See You There that you were telling me about, which was a collection of poetry and lived experience for, was it the author's son who had OCD in that book?
Yes,
Okay.
the whole family is neurodivergent. It's called I Didn't See You There, the poetic memoirs of one family's journey through mental health crisis, diagnosis, and embracing neurodivergence. The writer's, well, pen name at least, is Charlotte Gale. That came out recently, earlier this year. I'm not
Mhm.
very good with times.
Mhm.
It might have come out just before Christmas, actually, but it's brilliant. There's a lot of poetry in this poetry book. I
Yeah.
know that sounds really strange, but if you could physically see how large the book
Maybe.
is, you're getting a lot of poetry
Yeah.
for your buck, let me tell you.
I validate that. Usually it's like a little looking pamphlet. This is like a textbook. It's
This is
thick.
proper. This
Yeah.
is look, yeah, it's really, really good. Really powerful. Yeah, really beautiful. I have a feeling that this is going to be one of many. So
Yeah.
I believe it's on Amazon. Again, I can send you the link, Nicole, for
I
that.
I could grab it too.
But one of the amazing things that I get to be able to do with Autistic and Living the Dream, my kind of advocacy stuff that I do on my website. Being
Fierce advocacy over on the website too, because you were like, "Oh, I gotta do this." They're doing awesome work over there. I just had to do
oh, thank you. Yeah,
honorable mention.
appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you. So yeah, Autistic and Living the Dream. Be on the website, of course, of course. And Facebook, I'm Katie Munday on LinkedIn if you want to chat. I'm finding a lot of really cool people on LinkedIn. So add me on LinkedIn if you want to. I love that. But I get to do book reviews. I don't know who decided that I was the person who was doing book reviews, but I'm very happy to do that. I love that. So Charlotte sent me a copy of this and said, this is coming out soon. I really want it to be pushed. Could you let me know what you think about it and do a review on it? And I was like, yes. Oh, yes,
Yeah.
please. So I'm very pleased to be able to share that with you all today, because I know that I am not a parent of someone with OCD, or at least I'm not thinking I am at the moment currently. As someone who grew up with OCD, still lives with OCD and other mental health kind of stuff, I'm like, oh yeah. So not the kind of thing you'd read all in one sitting. I don't think you could physically do that, but emotionally perhaps not.
Yeah.
But really powerful stuff.
I mean, physically, if you could do it, because it is a big book, y'all, you'd have stamina that I don't understand. If you could read it in all one sitting. But yes, it's some heavy stuff, but representation matters. And I think what a beautiful medium to be able to express oneself, whether the sadness, the joy, and everything in between through poetry. And so I'm definitely going to check out a copy. And I can tell you, Katie has their copy sticky noted up like so many. Yes. Every time
This is a good point. This is
yes,
a good point.
every
There
time
are
they
all the
lift it up,
Russells.
I'm like, oh, there's morsels. There are morsels throughout that book because they have done the work, and I can just even see that visually. So Katie, I so appreciate your time as always, and it was so good. Before we started recording Family, we just got an opportunity to catch up, and I really value you, and I'm so happy to have a conversation at any time. So this isn't goodbye for us, and you are always welcome here. You're part of the family, but I am just excited because all the amazing work that you're doing. And again, you're like, I have knives left in my spoon drawer here at this point, which I can imagine. And yet reviewing books and doing all the things. And so I thank you sincerely for taking the time, helping the family to break down and understand, I think particularly how research and representation is so important for disabilities, for neurodivergence, for identity, for orientation, all of those things. And so I just so appreciate you, and it was wonderful chatting again.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. Yeah, as soon as you messaged me the other day to say, would you come on? I was like, yes. Yes. What? Clear the schedule.
Yes.
I'm going to go talk to Nicole. Thank you. This will be amazing, because they come on here and it's just, just like having a conversation with, am I allowed to say an old friend? Let's say an old friend. Why not? We've known each other a couple of years. I can say old friend. That's fine. So
please say old friend. Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, that's a nice thing. And I feel if I could just have one more cheeky little reflection.
Oh, yeah.
Of what I would say. And I spoke about this last time we spoke, actually, around community and online community and what that might look like for OCD folks and what that might look like for autistic people as well. But I find that some of my richest friendships and connections with other people are online. And if people are new to an OCD diagnosis or an autism diagnosis or whatever it might be, find people online. They exist and they're wonderful, and these connections are valid and real and beautiful. So do it.
Yes. And dare I say the word of the day, important. They're important. They're no less
important.
They're no less important just because they're virtual. They matter.
They bring joy. Joy, and they're important.
Yes. Well, you definitely bring me joy. I appreciate you, and I just can't wait to see where things grow from here. But I will say, from one old friend to another, that, it's okay to say no or take breaks when you need to, because I can only imagine with so many things you have going on, how overwhelming that can be. But I was going to say, I'm proud. You have done so much. So thank you. And until we chat again,
take care.
Intrusive thoughts. Okay, family. What a powerful conversation with my old friend Katie. There was a lot of good to chew on from this episode, but one thing that really stuck out to me was when Katie had mentioned, what if we were not afraid of getting things wrong, but we were excited about getting it right? I mean, what a powerful thought, huh? And it's funny because as you just heard, as we ended today's conversation, I shared with Katie how proud I am of them. But as I started to say that to Katie, I have to be honest, family, I suddenly got this feeling of like dread. Like, what if me saying I'm proud is going to come off like it's condescending? Like, hey, down there, you're doing great, which couldn't be further from the truth. I'm looking up and going, wow, they're amazing. But as I started to say it and it started to come out, I kind of just stopped myself. I'm proud. You're working so hard. And I wrapped the episode because my intention, ironically, after the conversation we just had, was to compliment and to, for lack of a better word, share my pride in all of the awesome things they were doing. And instead, I started to slink back and worry, one of my superpowers, no doubt, about whether or not I was being rude or coming off rude. So after I was like, Katie, listen. And it fostered this really unfiltered but beautiful conversation about how we can get so worried about how things might be taken, or can I say this or can I say that? Sometimes what we learn in that moment is to not say things at all, just to be safe, because we don't want to be offensive. And you know what's sad about that, fam? Is there's no shame in having joy and pride in our friends' amazing accomplishments and celebrating that. But if I had been too afraid to get it wrong, then even when we see the beauty around us and have the utmost respect, visibility fades away. So, Katie, I do appreciate you and I'm proud of you. And I don't want that to be weird, but if it is, I can learn from it. But it turns out it wasn't weird. And I'm excited and I'm grateful for Katie and I'm glad I could tell them. So why do I share this? Because I want you to know this is challenging and sometimes messy and can be vulnerable even for me, but it's important. So for today's intrusive thought segment, which for any newer family joining us is my application segment of the show, I want to invite y'all, like me, to take a look at ourselves. What are we afraid to say? What questions are we afraid to ask or learn? Because what if we don't get it right? And if you can, I want you to find a safe person or a community where you can ask. But the second part to this, which is equally, if not just as important, let's also practice listening. Katie modeled this well, and I could use some work on this too. So often we jump into defense mode, and often because we're passionate and we care so much about the things we're fighting for. But what if we dared to disarm our defenses and really focused on listening to the other person? We might find ourselves softening toward another perspective. We might discover a blooming curiosity, or we might still conclude that we disagree. But instead of just disagreeing, just shutting an idea down, what if we really, really listened? I like to think I do this pretty well with others, and hey, maybe I do, but that doesn't mean I always do. I'm not perfect, far from it, actually. And I can tell you that the one person I know for sure that I really, really, really struggle to accomplish this with is myself. I think for many of us, we are our own worst critics. Katie mentioned it earlier. Don't gatekeep from yourself. Take your space. We are all important. Take space. Mess up. And when we do, be responsible. And give grace. It's hard. I know. But I have a feeling, fam, that if we could just make a practice of this, then that joy that Katie was talking about would be even easier to find. So let's practice getting excited about getting it right. Listening, including, reflecting, and respecting each other. Because we are important. And we are better together. Thank you for joining me and our OCD family community. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please like and subscribe to the OCD Family Podcast wherever you enjoy your podcasts. Did you find this content helpful? Please consider leaving a review. The more people that know they're not alone, the better. For more information regarding today's podcast, please visit ocdfamilypodcast.com and remember to join the email list while you're there. It will provide you with the most up-to-date information, resources, and the down low on the family chatter. Oh yeah, nothing says family like Katie and me claiming space in our family. That's right, I went there. you can too at ocdfamilypodcast.com.
Therapists, are your clients struggling with disgust-based contamination OCD? Have you tried upgrading your ERP with the Mastery approach? Visit ocdfamilypodcast.com/courses and click on my link because I've got just the training for you. At ocdfamilypodcast.com/courses, you can check out OCD Training School's entire catalog of courses, including Rich Gallagher's course, Treating Contamination OCD. Where else can you build mastery over disgust-based triggers while supporting the fam at no extra cost to you? It's a win-win at ocdfamilypodcast.com/courses.